So we did have an apartment complex that was damaged. I say significantly. I hate the official term substantially damaged because if you had any damage whatsoever, the apartment complex had already met our requirements. But all the first floor units got damaged, all the cars were so everybody had to move out. But we did just see COs on those buildings. So those are just working one at a time with the folks just lost whole homes trying to figure out what you've seen COs for new units. Some are demolishing and frankly places that I hope not see units go back. So it's trying to reconcile that. Should things go back versus the need for housing. So we are doing some amendments to our flood code to slightly increase elevation requirements for residential uses. And we are actually looking at prohibiting a few extra uses in floodplains,
including multifamily.
Densities in flood.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Similar to there's the culture, we had dozens and dozens of homes really wiped out. We have also and the majority of the damage is concentrated in the back cave curtain area. And we just hired a consultant to help us plan out there. So we doing a lot of people buyouts with a lot of people. Just the county, especially in the northeast part of the county. But despite all that, we still seen a ton of developers trying to push their projects, single family and multi-family right now.
In the counties, the buyout program requires the local body to approve the buyout. Is your county moving in that direction?
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah, 60 seconds isn't a lot of time, and I could talk much past that. I know that Linus Guy is also going to be presenting on the housing assessment as part of Agenda 7, so I'll focus on sort of the bigger picture things. Again, BOA is doing a lot of work with substantial damage that's commercial related in terms of housing. We had a housing hurricane before the actual hurricane. We could not get, PD housing. I will focus on the positive here. At March 11th, we saw some zoning text amendments, and as a result of that, we are now here in May starting to see some applications with reduced parking, individuals taking advantage of those increased densities for review. I'd like to highlight 290 Depot Street. That is one that will be going as a level 2 in the River Arts District to give housing that will be, let's say 36 1 bedrooms, 12 2 bedrooms for 48 units. That's going to be in the River Arts District, comply with everything, and that's going to be a level 2. We have also had a couple of smaller townhouse and infill developments in places like Office, so that we are starting to see. It is spring, so for the obvious metaphor, we're starting to see some budding and some growth from some of those ETA changes to help with housing. Of course, we still need more of it, but related to I'll leave that.
That's wonderful news.
Don't want to give it all away.
Jonathan Jones.
So, Buncombe County's assessment, working with FEMA, it's more than 1,000 units were damaged in some way. 34 with major damage, 68 that were completely destroyed. So the county is working on developing projects as part of our long-term recovery plan over the summer, doing some public engagement opportunities to understand what the other community needs are as far as business recovery and assessments. Hoping to continue with some projects, avenues, continue the momentum.
What's next, Matt Card? Yep.
Jonathan pretty much said perfectly.
Okay. Great. Karen?
Well, Madison County, as many know, we're higher elevation with no large waterways. So our impact from Helene was very minimal. Mostly the impact was to the stormwater infrastructure, systems within this town, and the only creek is Gabriel's Creek, which is where the town sewer system. So there was some flooding at that point, but this is one of those that you almost feel guilty that you weren't had receive any damage. That you're the community that came through this, and when you know that your two neighboring towns were just devastated.
I can report that we have issued 341 total permits related to Helene damage. 16 of those are demolition permits that are not related to floodplain damages, and we have at least 2 homes that were completely destroyed. I do have a number of 475 damaged structures, and I regret that I did not get clarity if that was just housing or any structures in the town. I think it's a total of all structures, though. I couldn't get any numbers on displaced individuals, but I know that we do have probably in the single digits people that are living in temporary emergency housing in that.
So the town of Marshall had 18 single-family units that were totally destroyed, which is a lot when you have less than 900 people in your community. We had a public housing apartment complex right on Main Street that was also completely inundated on the first floor. We're hoping the second floor units are going to open up soon because Main Street has reopened. A lot of our businesses have reopened, and so we do want to see folks coming back downtown. Just prior to the storm, we had increased density within our central business district to try to encourage residential development on Main Street. And because of the storm, we are hearing people interested in converting the upper spaces that had been used more as storage as potential housing units, which is excellent because we desperately need housing units. As far as the 18 single family units that were destroyed, most of them were mobile homes concentrated in 2 areas. Samaritan's Purse has really come through. Those are the only permits we've issued for rebuilding, where Samaritan's Purse has donated single wide mobile homes. They are going to be located back in the floodplain, but unfortunately, these folks don't really have anywhere else that they can go because of the cost of land. So we are working on getting those permitted so that we can hopefully start to issue some COs, because we have not issued any COs to date since the storm.
So Woodfin, we probably lost 1 or 2 housing units due to flooding, but more displacement was trees. It was trees going through houses.
Yeah.
As 2 or 3 mobile homes were damaged by trees. I think the one person that lost their life in town was due to a tree as well. And it was not just one location in town. It was spread throughout elevations. Housing costs, housing ranges, people affected at all income scales. So it was an equal opportunity hit, and the town has updated their floodplain ordinance lately, and we're hopefully taking that over for Buncombe County this year. So I think the planning department's happy about that.
Great, thank you, everybody. I don't have the specific numbers about Asheville. I asked you all to do that and didn't prepare them. I don't want to misquote them. I know that there's 400 or so commercial buildings throughout Buncombe County. That includes Asheville. And I thought it was like 400 houses. Do you know anybody else? Or Sam, do you know?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, me either. Okay, well, I'll be sure to update you on that again later. I appreciate the personal updates. It's helpful to see how everyone is impacted. Like I was just in downtown Marshall and saw that some of the businesses along the main street are finally opening. It's just long time coming. So my condolences to everybody and how they're having to deal with the aftermath. Okay, so we are going to hear next about home projects and kind of updating and completing and upcoming. And
Before we move to that, could I
Go ahead.
quickly mention that Aaron, I'm seeing on the screen that Aaron Bland, who is from the city of Brevard, is attending virtually. This was intended to be an in-person meeting, but we're glad you're here. Aaron, would you like to, Aaron,
Thank you.
mention that you're attending, if we can take attendance that he is.
Yeah, I'm adding him right now.
Aaron, are you there?
May not
Maybe
be able
Aaron
to speak.
will come to us in a little bit, but I just want to
Okay.
mention that microphone is not working. Okay. Aaron is in
Thank you.
attendance.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So Kaylee's going to give us an update. kind of won't be in the video, but welcome consortium members. It's so nice to finally see all of y'all. I know we've talked a lot over email the past few years with our partners in the back. We're so glad y'all could come down. There's just a few projects that we want to highlight that have had a lot of success this past year. And we'll start with Lakeshore Villas. This project is located in Buncombe County. It closed back September 26th, right before the hurricane. This project actually broke ground November 18th. This was a huge milestone after Helene to show that we can rebuild, we can come back from the hurricane. We had $750,000 of our home funds go into it. This is a large complex located close to Arden. It's a total of 120 affordable units, and out of all of those, we have 4 home units. Out of that 750,000, 4 of those units are funded by our home dollars. Next, we're going to move in towards Henderson County, and this is Don Meadows Phase 6 specifically. This is a project with Hendersonville Habitat for Humanity. This went under contract in June 2024. Like I said, this is our down payment assistance program. So what this does is we provide money with Henderson County, and then they provide individuals with down payment assistance to get into homes. This project had a total funding amount of a little over $106,000. We were able to help a total of 5 individuals. Out of those, we've had 3 of those close since then, and we have 2 more units closing in the coming weeks. Next, we have Fairhaven Summit. This is a project with Commonwealth Development. This is located in the city of Asheville limits. It had a closing date of May 8th, 2024. The total funding we put into this is $400,000. It's a total of 77 affordable units, and out of that 77, we have 5 home assisted units. And these are kind of some current up-to-date pictures of the project. They're making a lot of work after Hurricane Helene. And just a note to add that this project has requested additional funding from the city of Asheville's HTF funds. Another project to highlight, this one's located in Madison County. This is with our partners of CHC. A little over $205,000 have gone into this project. It was to replace a dilapidated home. You can see it in the corner up there. It was replaced with a new and Energy Star standard home right there in the corner. And this project has like I said, over $205,000. And a quick side note is that since then, CHC has closed 2 more contracts, another replacement contract, and another home rehab project. And that is everything for me, Councilwoman Haley.
So the next thing we'll provide you with an update on is kind of what's in our plan that we're working on right now. Fairhaven Meadows is a project that the Home Consortium has been in purview for several years. It got initial funding back in 2022 with $500,000, another allocation in 2023 of $350,000. So this project has originally allocated via council resolution and our action plans $850,000 for a 42-unit, 100% affordable project in Brevard. Of those 42 units, 5 are designated as home units. This project had significant cost overruns when their final construction estimates came back. They had about $2 million gap that they needed to close, that they came to us to see if we could help them close that. And taking into consideration the original funding amounts of $500 and $350, with our regulations and our citizen participation plan, we are able to make up to 50% changes in the funding amounts without having to go through what's called a substantial amendment process, where we have to do public notice, go to city council, submit the substantial amendment and funding to the Department of Housing and Urban Development for their approval. We kept ourselves within our lane of what we can add in additional funding. So in 2024, our action plan for 2024 with the home program was entirely put into affordable housing construction without a specific project necessarily named. Now, we did fund Apple Ridge is another project that's in our pipeline right now. The environmentals are done, expected to close later this fall. But with the remaining funding from 2024, we used $158,270 to increase the funding amount for Fairhaven Summit. And we also had PI program income that we have collected over the last few years that we're able to dedicate to this project as well to help them close that funding gap. So we added $425,000 total to this project, which is 50% of the original what we've originally allocated them. So we're within that, below that substantial amendment threshold, with a total funding now of $1.275 million going to this project. Another entity that helped us close that gap was City of Brevard, who also provided them with, I believe it was a loan financing. Emily Brewer, who is on maternity leave right now, been in communication with her, or maybe Transylvania County, who provided the additional gap financing, but they also were able to kick in another 1.1 million to help close that gap. We were at the day before closing for this project about 2 weeks ago. The developer, we had all the capital stacked together. The developer was ready to go, and the builder could not produce performance bonds on the day before closing. So for y'all that don't know, performance bonds are what guarantees that a project will actually get built by the builder. It's an insurance policy that says, once we break ground, once we actually execute these contracts, you will deliver the units. And with any deal, we do expect and require performance bonds, because when we put, overall this project is a $13 million project. You want to break ground with surety that you're going to actually get the thing that you're paying for. And we could not get that. So the developer was quickly able to identify another builder that they had as a part of their bidding process. It's a developer, or it's a builder that they have used for other projects in the past. So they're reviewing that, the project right now. They're reviewing the financing. Everything looks good to them. They're going through their due diligence just to make sure that they can actually deliver and also get the performance bonds. Any questions on this? This is, again, a project in Brevard, right on Asheville Highway as you're coming into town. If y'all are familiar with the highway, that big traffic circle, right when you're getting there, as you're coming into Brevard, that's where it's going to be located. So we were pretty much at the day before closing. Never really had that happen before with a builder, but I think it's a unique situation maybe where the builder may be a little bit stretched to capacity, right?
Thank you, James.
Yeah, but we do expect to close on this. The anticipate by the end of this month is really good. So I think we're in concept done as an administrative change, or did the funding? It was an administrative change. Yeah. So without the consortium meeting, it doesn't rise to the level of needing to like go for a council approval. But we're wanting to inform y'all today that this was an administrative change, a minor amendment technically. We have collected over the last 3 or 4 years upwards, I think, $460,000 in program income. So program income is money that we loan out and it comes back to us as repaid loans. And when we collect that, we reprogram it for other activities. So we've collected that over the last few years. We were sitting on about 460,000. We've programmed about 60 of it, and then we have about 420-ish. We'll have a slide here in a minute that kind of talks to our funding that we have available to allocate. When we talk about our upcoming funding cycle, we'll talk a little bit more about those buckets.
Everybody understanding? Good on that? More questions? Okay. Moving on to the next item. I guess, James, are you walking us through that?
Well, just one more on
Okay.
that. This is another project.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine. With the Housing Assistance Corporation, Apple Ridge is in Henderson County. We allocated $600,000 of last year's grant toward this project. This is a 60-unit project that is right now just completed their environmental reviews. with an anticipated final closing in the fall. So they were issued their authority to use grant funds. They were able to break ground and start the work down there. One of the interesting things about this project is it falls within an area where we have what's called a bat window. Who's familiar with the bat window? So you can't start clearing trees for a project within a certain time frame during the year when it's bat nesting season. I'm learning about this, so don't think I'm an expert. Take my word for it. That we got in before the bat window so that they could start doing the clearing and the grading, excuse me, to get this project going. Cool.
Okay, this is the next section, yeah. Why don't you just keep going?
Sure. So another pot of money that we have that was allocated, I believe in 2020, 2021 as part of the American Rescue Plan Act, would have been 21, was additional funding through the home program as part of the COVID response and kind of a stimulus activity from Congress. Was we got allocated $4.6 million through this program. We hired a consulting firm to help us develop an action plan or an allocation plan for this. That allocation plan was developed in March 2023. It consists of a lot of really great housing data, really good assessment and community engagement, stakeholder engagement to develop that allocation plan. And out of it came a plan that 3.1 million of that pot would go to the development of affordable rental housing. So that's rehab or new construction. An additional $1 million would go for supportive services to help people access housing. Then the remaining amount, $599,000, is for administrative costs. We have sought to hire a program manager for this grant 3 times without successfully being able to onboard someone. The housing market, the labor market has been kind of funky recently. We've just had what I would just say a string of bad luck. So 3 times, 3 strikes, we tried. So last month we issued an RFP, a request for proposals, to contract this out with professional services to help us develop the application process, help us assess those applications, do our underwriting, and help us to implement this into the community. So we have just closed that RFP yesterday. We have about 7 proposals that we've received that we're going to be reviewing with an anticipated kickoff with our selected contractor in July. And we want to launch applications in December. December is a kind of a strategic month in a lot of for our region and the city of Asheville as well. That's kind of when we anticipate or what we would like to do is make sure that we're reestablishing and sticking to our regular cycle of applications with home as well as with our CDBG program. But it's also where we're anticipating potential launch of our CDBG DR applications for affordable housing development. So having those kind of work at the same time where we might see this kind of surge of affordable housing financing coming into the market in December. And that our strategy with that is to seek to align with the low-income housing tax credits application cycle so that we can be a part of that going into next year. Any questions on home ARM? One last thing, we do have until 2030.
Okay.
I believe is the yeah.
I was wondering that.
That's how long that money lives.
Is it 2030?
2030 or 2031.
So it's not the normal 2026.
I thought it was but we'll double check. You probably know. 2030.
Because 2026 is
For all the other ARPA funds that came out. Yeah. we
December
have to work-
31st, 2026. So this is, I mean, excellent news.
Yeah.
Surprising.
I'll confirm that. That's my understanding. I think we had that in the RFP. It does sound like a long time, but I do believe they gave a lot more flexibility with this.
And they allocated it later and separately.
Okay.
Maybe
Um,
with a designated plan too.
Yeah, I think it was at least a full year later. I can't really recall. Seems like a long time ago. That was 2 disasters ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
With that, any other questions about home ARM?
Anyone?
We would want to, one of our last agenda items is to talk about a schedule of meetings with the consortium. With the anticipation of bringing on a contractor in July, we would want them to come and like kind of present themselves and introduce themselves to this group at the next meeting.
So we have a couple things here, an update on pipeline projects and then Land of Sky Group, but you have a different update on pipeline projects that wasn't.
The pipeline projects were Fairhaven Meadows and
Yeah. So you just kind of combined several items. Okay, so then I think we're on to consolidated plan update for Land of Sky. Yeah, okay. What do you
Well,
guys-
I might just sit down if you guys can hear me, or you guys can hear me up there.
I don't know if you have a mic up there. You want to pass that mic? I'll put it closer to you.
if you want the keyboard so you can drive.
Yeah.
This is the microphone too, just kind of.
Be sure to
Project.
yell if I can. Sorry, allergies got me a little froggy, but that's all right. Well, thank you guys again for having me here. I'll try to keep this as sweet as I can because it seems like a lot of it's already been covered. Right now, Land of Sky is working with the City of Asheville to update the consolidated plan. Those of you who don't know, the consolidated plan is required to be updated by HUD every 5 years for all the home funds that we have and all those awesome projects we get to do. We want to make sure we can continue receiving that money. So the consolidated plan, just for a brief sort of overview, and I appreciate everybody who came to our previous stakeholder meetings. Some of these slides are going to look familiar. Our consolidated plan is essentially like a mission statement for our community, for our regions, for people receiving the home funds, and for HUD to know that what we're doing with these dollars is going to the right places. It outlines what we see as our needs, gives what we're going to set as priorities, outlines the resources we're going to use to address those priorities, and what goals we're going to have along the way to make sure that we're actually making progress towards that. Recently, we just found out that for home, through the consortium, this year we're going to receive a little over $1 million, $1,050,000 there, and CDBG is going to get a little under $1 million this year. And those numbers hopefully will stay fairly consistent for us. We'll see. Last year for the consolidated plan was roughly about $6 million through the 2020-2024 plan that got allocated to. Examples of home funding that was used, and we brought up some good ones already. Lakeshore Villas, down payment assistance for habitat. Housing Authority also used some tenant-based rental assistance, but the home funds can cover a wide. The acquisition, rehab repairs, recently found out, including in those rehab repairs is septic. That was a nice big surprise from one of our earlier stakeholder meetings, whether that could cover that or not. But that can go into single-family repairs. Homes can also be used for site improvements, down payment and rental assistance. You can see here for those two that were from the 2023-24 home projects. Relocation costs, new construction, and other CHODO activities, community housing development organizations. Here's how the home funds were distributed to the last comp plan. You can see a lot of them are here in Buncombe County. That's just a higher population, kind of expect that. But even with our lowest populated area of Madison, they had 4 projects going on in their community. You can see, a little almost, I guess you'd say the smaller share of it, 9%. But the home funds get distributed pretty equally across the county, across the region. See more projects lined up. We'll see what we can do. It's hard to stretch those dollars thin the little we have. Here's the typical plan process, determining needs, setting priorities, determining resources, and setting goals. And all of that involves citizen participation and consultation with stakeholders, which again, I appreciate everyone that came to the stakeholder meetings. Your input was greatly appreciated there. But right now, we're still determining needs. We'll get that a lot more down flowing in upcoming slides, setting priorities, and determining the resources. We kind of already have that in play from different coalitions we have. Even here in the consortium can help us identify more resources. But the big thing that we're still kind of working on is setting goals for the comp plan. That's where it's taking a lot of that data that we've got, a lot of feedback we've got, and trying to formulate plans from what we had from last year's goals to what we could do for the next 5 years. Here's the current plan timeline. Now, normally we do public surveys and go out and actually do con plan specific surveys to the public, but we figured after the Halloween, there'd be a lot of survey fatigue. So we used current public surveys from the City of Asheville, City of Brevard, City of Hendersonville, all to sort of work our public input portion. Right now, we're currently combining the input with what we're going to get from Bowen for housing needs assessment, and currently working with different county groups to incorporate more of that. Once we get all that information in, we'll have a review and hopefully get a draft to the City Council and have that submitted to HUD by July. We found we've got to get July 11th, I believe is the date for it.
July 13th is the 60-day mark, but that's a Sunday, so we're targeting July 11th. is the day to finally submit.
Be on the lookout for that on the council.
Yeah, coming soon.
Coming your way.
Don't cancel.
Yeah, you got a busy month of this.
Coming your way.
There's only one July meeting, so,
No, June, this will be June.
okay.
We're gonna come through in June.
Got a lot of the rest of
To
the
beat
year.
the June 11th, okay. Or July 11th.
So as I said earlier, the public surveys we used a lot from the recovery priority survey that the city of Asheville did. City of Hendersonville was great. Affordable housing listening sessions you guys had all in the fall, targeting specific groups that, normally you couldn't really say it, but now that they've sort of I would say outlawed, but banned the sort of DEI requirements of that. That's great that you guys did faith-based and try to target, Hispanic communities there as well. Other public input that we got that we're using is from City of Brevard, for their development finance initiative they're doing with school government. And that's really awesome work that I've seen. At least they're making great progress on it because in the fall, they're still getting input. And they most recently closed up a survey in April on deciding the actual plans for the project. So that's going to be really exciting to see what they're going to do and hope they'll go out for proposals from or RFP should go out soon for that to see what they can get. Like I said, thank you again for all the stakeholders here that I've seen that came to previous meetings. This is our current schedule. We've had a really rock block of getting input. We've got one tomorrow, and that should be the end of it, where all the information we sort of incorporate from what we've gathered. Regional Housing Alliance, they kind of stayed with the goals that we had outlined. Didn't really anything too much more specific that we didn't already known. Buncombe County was great to address adding new construction to that, so that was awesome because we kind of left that off the table. Henderson County was also great in doing more tenant rental assistance and trying to figure out what that gap is, especially a big topic of concern that came up there is having this rental assistance program and then people refusing, or not say refusing, but unable to like move up the economic ladder because they didn't want to lose out on, the current housing option they have had. And that's sort of a sticky subject as well. On Monday in Madison County, great conversation, especially towards infrastructure, things you don't realize is regarding like septic and well, and all that goes into sort of the rural areas of Madison County there. That was a great discussion. And it was good to know that we can use those home funds as for single family home repair regarding septic. And hopefully we'll get some good news from Pennsylvania. I imagine it's going to be all along the same lines because, we're all experiencing the same current sort of housing issues in our area. But we'll see what we get. So a huge part of the consolidated plan and a great help from Bowen. They helped us with the Western North Carolina Housing Needs Assessment 2 years ago that Dogwood Health sponsored. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. Has anybody worked on a comp plan here before? Should ask. And that's right. So with that, as or I guess I can tell you now that part of that is all outlined by HUD. It's a template that we have to follow. And a huge portion of that is determining the needs of our area and doing a market analysis of what our current housing stock is. So what we'll get a lot of information on is our current demographics, income levels, age, population, the supply side thing, doing rental housing, senior care, foreclosures and eviction, what's available accessory dwelling wise, and what we have. I'm kind of curious to see how this is going to look for our short-term rentals as well, what that data is going to show, because I know when I was with Buncombe, we had a big sort of issue trying to enforce regulations for short-term rentals, but I know the City of Asheville, you guys have struggled with kind of that as well. So I'd like to see what Bowen's got on that data, but all of it's going to be really great so we can craft a good plan and determine the needs for our area. And big one, that additional task that hopefully we're going to see a lot of, and I'm glad you guys shared what's been impacting your community with Helene. I'd like to see what they'll have on the Helene side of things and how that's impacted our housing stock. Here's just a sneak peek of what they've done so far. And this is just the total households for our area. As you can see, they're growing and they're going to be projected to grow. The only one that really had a slight decline was Pennsylvania County, but I'm sure that's on the uptick now. And you can see it's projected to keep going through fairly more demographics, as a lot of you kind of already know. We are an older, elderly population here, especially in Henderson County. There's a significant group of individuals that are 65 and older, and a sharp increase is going to be the 75 plus and older community. Now, I don't know if it's true that to healthcare or more people moving to Florida, but this is sort of what we have demographic wise.
Wait, go back again.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And are we getting these slides?
Yeah.
Is it in our packet or something? Okay, great.
Yeah. And you'll get even more data when the housing needs assessment comes out. I mean, a lot of that's going to be in the comp plan, so you can review that, and that'll be at the draft for council as well.
Wow, y'all, we're getting old.
Yeah, so I'll say good health care. That's what I'm trying to say.
You're saying HCA is good at healthcare?
No, I'm saying, I'm
Oh,
saying that.
sorry.
I'm saying that, we're definitely making progress, strides.
I didn't realize that.
Nor are we getting, like, I said, more influx of people from Florida, since it seems to be the case.
Interesting.
People are living longer.
People are living longer. There you go.
Am I seeing correctly, this is measured by the head of the household, not?
No, I don't know the specifics on this data. This is just what was given to us by Bowen, but I'd imagine that's whoever's
Interesting.
the head of the household. Yeah,
Okay.
whatever they've got from their data, I imagine that's what's going to be.
Usually with head of household, when you're thinking about housing, they're usually the one who are responsible for the rent or the mortgage. So they're like the person responsible for that. So I think in the housing context, that's what HUD encourages us to look at is head of household. Now, granted, there's usually, in most families, there's two people, right? And it's not just one person. But with the age of a head of household, you can pretty well assume that if there's another head of a household or a co-head, it's about the same age.
Yeah, I just wonder about the multi-generational
Yeah,
data that would be lost.
Mhm.
it's interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely good points as well. I don't know if they break it down specifically beyond that, but it was striking to see that not too many people are having kids as well. It seems like for
Oh,
losing out, looking on the one sort of downside we have is, shrinking, youth, teen population.
is this something like Patrick Bowen may come and talk to us about at some point?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think what
okay.
we'll probably do, and we'll obviously develop the next agenda is we're already envisioning this, and we'll talk about this at the end, but the next meeting is the full presentation of Bowen, that we would ask them to come and present to this group on the housing assessment. And then bringing in our consultant that's going to help us implement home ARP. A couple other things too, but yeah, we can definitely do that.
And Patrick said he was willing to do, a couple presentations. So if there's something that's more for this group during the day, and then, I know we did a big evening engagement. We can talk
Oh,
about
yeah,
that.
that'd be great.
Yeah, but he's here, he wants to, or he will be here and wants to provide as much of this information to as many people as y'all.
Great.
Looking for any excuse to come to North Carolina.
Yeah.
He loves us.
Will the information be provided to each of the county?
I'm happy to share whatever we get. I think it'd be widely distributed, at least in the content, not, that housing needs assessment. I don't know how much is,
It's broken
intellectual
out.
property, but yeah.
It's shared. It's all,
It'll be public.
Yeah.
the property of the ARHC and is broken out. There's regional information, there's city specific information because of the CDBG funds, and there is by county breakdowns as well.
Definitely appreciate all this help on the previous comp plan, the one before that, and this one as well. This is sort of what we have on the rental side of things and what's been available for sale. It's kind of striking to see that Madison, Pennsylvania, have 0 vacant units. I believe what a healthy vacancy unit was about 6, I want to say. So you kind of see that in some of the other areas, city of Asheville, Henderson County, but I'm still kind of within that range. But shocking to see Madison County's got 0 vacant units in Pennsylvania as well. And available homes for sale. This is probably another, I think it's where he said 2 to 3 instead of for this one, availability rate. And we're kind of seeing that's tight for what's available there on the market. Everything is close to covering there. Right. The median list price is insanely high. It's a huge spike from 2021 to what we have.
This is, go back real quick. Some of those are higher than I'm used to for Transylvania.
Yeah, it's shocking that Transylvania, like I recently did this housing assessment workshop seminar, and Transylvania's got like the highest property rate in our region, but they have the highest.
Okay.
So, we talked about maybe is that something contributing to that. Property rate to be going into, but it's nothing that I'd say it's significant for their that regard. That's got, I think a lot of it has to maybe do with like Coxway, sort of the second home community there, driving up prices. The big thing from all that research that Owen has done is looking at our needs and what we should sort of prioritize. That's not what we exactly need to do, but it's suggested based on a survey that was sent out. It was 48 respondents. Some of you may even got that survey and responded to it. It was representative of all 4 counties, different groups of people from nonprofit, government officials, other organizations, and the private sector. And the biggest housing issue, of course, as we all kind of know, is affordability. Without a doubt, whether that's a rental unit or a homeowner unit, single family home, affordability is our biggest issue. And the biggest barrier to that is land. And that's whether it's the cost of land, the availability of land, and even further down, just the lack of buildable sites if you are able to obtain some land. That's something that I think definitely needs to be considered as we're going forth. I mean, this is just a snippet of the data that's out there. This is sort of our sneak peek, but I think that's striking as to what we should focus on in the future. Finally, determining resources. This is part of the comp plan where you determine your needs and priorities, and we outline in our group who is going to be responsible for helping us achieve, these needs and priorities, who's got that sort of expertise in the field to make sure that we use those dollars appropriately and can help us, reach those goals. And CHOTOs are a big one of that. A lot of us here in the consortium, very helpful as well. Departments of government, nonprofits, community and faith-based organizations, private industry is also great. And, it seems like from what I've been doing on a lot of these other stakeholder meetings, it seems like the private sector has been their voice has been left out a bit. So I don't know if there's any shot in the dark, anybody that may know that would like to come give some feedback, that would be great. Because I feel like that's been a voice that, they're a huge part of what needs to be done to address housing, and they're having really good takes. Here are the goals from last year. This is across all counties in the consortium. Everybody agreed for new construction, affordable rental housing, rental assistance. Now that rental assistance was sort of focused on homeless households or those experiencing homelessness, housing rehabilitation, and new construction for home ownership. And these outcome indicators are what's listed. I'm not too concerned about those right now. We just more want to focus on what those goals are. We don't want to create any arbitrary numbers either. We look at a lot of data to determine if these are, were these too conservative, or these too liberal, or these too ambitious on our end. What would be best going forward? Definitely lean towards conservative. So we can see a lot of now, what's been discussed highly from stakeholder meetings and previously is focusing on these three areas of sort of preserving the housing stock that we have, affordability, doing rental assistance, doing down payment assistance, and housing rehab. And as I mentioned at some of the stakeholder meetings, it's come up, gap funding, which is, I can't remember which project that was just brought up on. Was it Apple Ridge?
Fairhaven Meadows.
Fairhaven Meadows, it's a huge pot to sort of conserve money to help with gap funding. And of course, it was brought up to keep new construction of new units on the table, just because we didn't want to just focus highly on preserving the housing stock we have, because even if we preserve all the affordable units we have, there's still like a gap of like 6,000 that needs to, I guess, address what's in our specific area of homes that are needed to support our population. With that in mind, once you finish up the stakeholder meetings, we're going to input all this data, some numbers, get some more information from Bowen, narrow down the goals, and actually determine some of those numbers as the goal outcome indicators. I'll have a draft review, get to the council, and hopefully get their blessing to get to HUD so we can continue receiving those components and CDBG funds as well.
Awesome. Any questions, y'all?
City council.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who's in the stakeholder meetings and anybody in this room, I'll be happy to send the draft review out, because it's always, don't read all 300 pages of the document, but take a look at the important aspects.
But to be more specific, like, we won't have another consortium meeting to like review the consolidated plan. We need to have it out for public comment by toward the end of June, and we need to have it city council. I think June 24th is the city council date. So to get another meeting scheduled, happy to make that happen online if y'all feel like that's a priority, for sure. But just with the regular cadence of, this consortium is just now getting back together. We're going to be trying to charge ahead with Land of Sky, getting it fully wrapped up, getting it in front of council, and then sent to HUD by July 11th.
The Land of Sky council meetings, will it be made available to the community representatives? Sure. Now and then.
Sure.
Yeah, make every effort to get.
Yeah, we're gonna share it widely.
We definitely won't be hoarding any of this.
Yeah.
The whole
My
point is
purpose
as
of
much.
saying that is just that the full consortium representatives have the ability to see report in its whole.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole reason the consortium is here, is to distribute this commitment.
I know we all got, excuse me, I know we got a lot of meetings and everything, but I'm gonna talk later about, I want to talk, when we get under funding, I want to go back and talk about how staff and the city can move money around the program income. I think we need to have more of a discussion, because I feel like the consortium, at least from a transparency standpoint, I didn't bring it up earlier because I support what you did, but I think we are a consortium, we are members, we all are in this together. So I would like to have a virtual meeting where we see the plan and this board approves it and recommends it on to the city council. I think that's close to how it's supposed to work.
We've got an
So-
agenda item for future meeting and I've already got a note to bring that up. I think it's probably something we should do.
I completely support you.
Yeah.
And so the staff, from my perspective, you know, without the consortium meeting after Helene and with this project having that large gap come up, we kept ourselves within kind of what we could do as staff without hitting that substantial amendment threshold. And the way I explained that to the developer was, if I can't have the consortium giving input, I can't go beyond what I would ask city council to do. Because if I go to city council and ask them to authorize more funding, then we're able to do it at a staff level without engaging the consortium. That didn't feel. So I completely agree with you that any type of use of that program income or change in project funding, that should come to y'all 100%.
And what you don't know is, you know, Apple Ridge is in the whole 300,000 too. And so I'm sure there may be other projects that are in, and if we're just moving money and we're not talking as a group, we can't do it in a silo.
It's not fair. Yeah.
Huge follow up from that is that just a notice to let us know that it was happening. Is so that kind of input could be shared on concerns about other projects that we're individually aware of, but may not have come to the forefront from the staff.
Okay. You know, one of the things we don't normally do in our consortium meetings is the little check-in we did in the beginning here. And I wonder if that's sometimes applicable because we would have known other projects were. Okay. Any other comments, questions for Jacob and Brandon Sky while we have them up front? Hey, I look forward to seeing the entire 300 pages. I'll sit down and read it with you.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.
All right, so moving forward with home allocation and future meeting schedule are the last two items. For those, I was supposed to be announcing as we go. For those of you, the hundreds of people watching online. Now moving on to upcoming, substantial amendments first. I'm so sorry. Go ahead, James.
So this is what I would typically want to bring to you guys, is approval of substantial amendments, but also minor amendments should we provide additional funding to projects that have those types of gaps come up. One thing we would like for y'all to provide any input or feedback on is we did have a project that we funded in 2023 with $500,000 in home funds. The developer has rescinded that award. It is still allocated in our action plan with $500,000. We cannot take it out of our action plan without city council approval, and taking that to HUD as an official cancellation. So that will free up $500,000 of funding that was allocated to the Maribel projects in 2023 that we can use for projects moving forward. So the amendment will be to just cancel that project to allow for reallocation of funds. Does anybody have any questions or feedback on that one?
What is the timeline on the utilization of those funds?
The 2023, and I can answer your question again to confirm about the home art funding, because I do have the grant timelines pulled up, is the effective date of that grant is September 30th, 2030, is how long we have to spend down the home art money. And then the 2023 funding is until 2032.
Okay.
So it's the period of performance is until 2032 is when we want to see it totally drawn down, projects done, units are on.
Closed down.
Correct.
Interesting.
So we've got time to put it back into the system for new development.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a rental construction development. When the 2023 action plan was written, it was written project specific. So allocations went directly to a Maribel project. They went directly to a CHC Madison County project or a Habitat for Humanity project. It wasn't submitted to HUD as new housing construction or home repair. In the action plan last year, it was done all as one large project for affordable rental or construction. So it was left kind of at the staff level to field applications and make those decisions. Apple Ridge was one that was part of that cycle. But yeah, Maribel got significant support from, I think County Bonds was a big source of funding for that project. So they said they didn't want to deal with the home program it can be quite burdensome to go through the underwriting process and everything with home. So they rescinded that award.
Interesting.
So I will say the idea of moving away from those action plans, consolidated plans that list specific projects each year, that gets burdensome on this, like resubmission of amendments. It gets tedious. So having those large funding categories in the comp plan, I really would encourage the use of those large buckets. And then to John's suggestion that those individual funding project level consortium, so that we're not backing ourselves into those staff side of this, those little tedious, got to count every penny and get HUD's approval to make sure that a project can be complete as they try to finish the process.
And that drives with where you've been at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions about that? Because I think at staff level, we do support what Jonathan is saying is when, like with prior action plans, it was very project specific. In the last action plan in 24, it was very programs, but like program broad, just saying affordable housing construction, where we take that proposal to goes through the consortium, goes to Asheville City Council. Council approves that. We take it to HUD. They approve it. If we want to change that, we got to start back here and go all the way to council. Now, if we do it as a more programmatic side of just doing affordable rental construction, that allows us at the consortium to make those finer decisions without having to go to city council, the HUD approval. It can kind of allow us a lot more flexibility. But we do want this group to be the one that is engaged in making those recommendations on if projects do have gaps show up, how do we fill that? Do we fill that? That's definitely the role that we want the consortium to play.
Yeah, I agree. Those kind of vague language at the top level, but then this body's point of making sure we have policy or language or something that says it comes here, so we don't see more staff maneuvering.
Yeah, that's my question structurally, what has to change for that to be process?
Well, I think it can be written differently. We can be more vague in the document. We've been choosing to be more detailed. And I get that on my end because we always have to bring it back, shop it at other committees and do all this process. But if we can be more vague there, that's great for HUD purposes, but for our group and the projects, more detail on our local level.
So we still have to go to city council for any like contract that's not specific in our action plan. So it's part of the strategy of, for example, with our community development block grant program is project like awards specific to which organization. That way, when that gets approved, at least it has in the past, when that gets approved at city council level, we're authorized at staff, city manager level to execute contracts to that effect. So that's part of the strategy.
Excuse me, James, I'm sorry, and you're going to hate me for this, but if I may, one of the things that has been challenging as a newer member, just sort of really being catapulted into this, is understanding the norms of how these work. That makes total sense to me as someone that sees a lot of larger development projects. They rarely look the same at the end if they were entitled. More flexibility here, but I think as we're discussing, how do we do these substantial amendments? How do we make these changes? What are these policies and procedures? I think of our technical review committee and what makes that successful isn't SOPs, but there's like a board member handbook. So God forbid something happens. With us, they shouldn't have to, and or they're gone, then someone else can step in that know sort of what's expected or how to work. And then that way it's also memorialized. So do we get something like that to the AHRC? I mean, that's ostensibly pretty easy. That's a heavy undertaking to write.
It's not,
Sort of
we're doing it. Yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of in process. I don't know if we've gotten to this committee yet, but we are just yesterday started going over our council committees, and it's going to be our community committees, and eventually to this, because we realized that we don't have documentation. We don't have standards of procedure and so on, but I think we can get there.
Yeah, because we've got great minds and great ideas in this room, and it would be a shame to not capitalize that and use that to develop culture for these kinds of things, because these projects are going to change, but we got to capture that somehow.
And we're a large board. We're always onboarding new people, and then we're always changing process, so it's good to have some lanes.
Well, this board does have in its bylaws the ability to create committees. So if y'all want to create a funding committee that can meet separately, that is maybe just 5 members, it doesn't require the full committee that can review funding decisions on a more nimble basis. That's definitely within your abilities within the bylaws.
That's what we did last year,
Yeah, I
actually.
thought we should get that.
We did that last year. We would like to do it again. We're gonna get to some of that.
But you're wrong.
Yeah. But I know who to put on the new committee.
I know.
All right.
Any other thoughts on Maribel before we talk about this other amendment? ABCLT is the Asheville Buncombe Community Land Trust. They were allocated funding in 2020 and again in 2021. The funding was originally, so that y'all are familiar, the land trust operates on a model of they purchase a property, will fix up the home, sell it to a low income buyer, where they're not selling the land of the home, they're actually selling the structure itself. They maintain ownership of the land as a land trust, which allows them to preserve permanently the affordability of that property. And it's written into the deed of the house that the next buyer, when they sell that home, it can only be sold within certain restrictions. It has to go to another low income buyer. It's a model that's used pretty widely across the country. It hasn't been supported with home, except with these allocations from several years ago. It was originally intended for that acquisition. We've had some questions with HUD about, is the funding being provided for a land banking type activity, which HUD generally does not like us to use these funds for land banking, which is where you buy property and it just sits there. Now, there's a lot of ways to argue against that because they're actually providing that housing for a low income family. So in order to simplify, what ABCLT has proposed is to amend the activity that's in the action plan, not to be for using these funds for acquisition, but just to be for home repair, so that they can use these funds to fix up the homes for the low income home buyer. They're not using these funds for purchasing land. That's where I think the HUD kind of problem came up, is using home dollars to acquire land that's never actually passed in ownership to a low income. That equity is remaining with them.
Is this home repair on homes that are already within their program?
It is home repair for homes that I would want to get their specifics, but I think it's already within and what they intend to be in their program.
So
they will use other funding to purchase.
Okay, so these will become land banked homes. These ones getting repair are also land banked homes.
But the funding is not to be used for that. It'll be for the repair activity.
I ask because I just am generally concerned about the slow pace at which the land trust is growing, to no fault of their own, no blame or anything. I wish we could better understand what's happening and why the slow creep, and maybe it's land cost, all the lists we saw just a few minutes ago, but at some point it might be helpful just hear from them. We said that last year, I think, and now to move $200,000, which we know just on the surveys, affordable home ownership was number 2, right? And we, of course, need more home repair, but I'm getting a little concerned that we're not figuring this out. We're not getting the ABCLT growth at the rate we need, or partners in this realm. I don't know how we can. Does anybody else feel that way? Does anybody else want some more input on what's happening with land trust? If not just this one, but maybe others, if there are some. I mean, because the ask of us is to reallocate $200,000 that would have gone towards purchasing affordable home ownership.
Well, it's already allocated to this activity. All we're changing is the activity itself. So they're allocated the funding for acquisition, rehab, and resale. What we're changing it to is not moving the funding, but just changing what they're using the funding for.
I guess I was under the impression it was for acquisition though, but our HUD language says all 3. Yeah.
So an example of this going through my mind on that would be, as the transition from one homeowner to the next, are we potentially looking at coming in and making the necessary home repairs for the new homeowner prior to it going back on the market after it is being in the process of being sold and then repurchased?
My understanding is that this funding is for them to bring more homes into their model. So they have other funding sources to actually purchase the asset. They'll use this funding to repair it. And that will be able to bring the tenant into a decent, safe and affordable unit. They
So-
typically sell at less, than what they bought it for because it's subsidized.
So if it's in their, already in their inventory, if it's in a land trust inventory and if there's a sale, could the money be utilized to improve the quality of the housing before it goes to a new owner is one of the questions I had. And then if we can use if we can't use, I'm trying to say this. So if we were purchasing a property with an existing structure on it, residential structure on it, would that still be considered acquisition?
For them.
For them, yes, but not with this funding.
Not with the-
What we're changing is they would not be allowed to use this funding for that acquisition.
Why
They
are
would
we
just-
stripping that? Because they already have the 200 and something programmed for repairs. Why are we stripping the word acquisition? What if it changes again?
If we change it, they wouldn't be allowed to use it for the purchase of the asset. They would only be able to use it for actually contracting and bringing on home to do repair work. So that's what the issue with HUD has been, is that there's a problem with the land banking model where they're using the funding, if they're using it to acquire and maintaining ownership of the land, it's a land banking activity, which is
Maybe
not-
I'm confused. Is this a HUD? Is this a HUD request or an ABCLT request?
it's
To placate HUD.
yes.
Okay, I was thinking that it's ABCLT coming to us. Okay. Okay.
And it's also staff as well. We're trying to simplify and like dealing with HUD has been a little bit kind of funky, trying to figure out how to fit this within
Okay.
their regs. So in order to simplify what they're undertaking with home dollars, we're stripping out the acquisition and just making this a home repair type project. We do this with other nonprofits who do repair work. For example, in Madison County, CHC is one that does home repair work where we provide them with funding allocation. They contract out, they pay their contractors for time, materials, and then we reimburse the activity for them to make those home repairs so that we're doing that preservation of the unit.
Just gonna smooth out the HUD process for them and for employees here.
Mhm.
But they're separating the land ownership from the house.
Correct.
Yep. Homeowner gets repaired.
It's a little more direct, but they're still get the same amount of money if you can raise money for.
But in the future, we won't necessarily have pots of money dedicated to acquisition.
Not necessarily in a land trust model. Now you can use home funds for acquisition. We can purchase land. Or a developer or a nonprofit can purchase land and it can be used for affordable housing development, affordable housing, single family or multifamily.
Just not land trust acquisition. So disappointing. Okay.
A HUD regulation developed decades ago and haven't been revised in a way that
Interesting. Just because it's newer model. Okay.
Just so I'm just helping me clarify, when in that process would the rehab?
The model that my understanding is, I think you're looking at it two different ways. It can be both. I don't think we're restricting them to either or. So the one is they would purchase the asset with other funding,
Okay,
use this to make repairs to make it a decent, safe place to live. And then, a low income buyer moves in.
okay,
The other side, I think is what you were mentioning, was if they already have a home that's in their, or that they've already have in their model, where they're having turnover, the homeowner is selling it, where they could use these funds to make needed repairs or improvements for the next person.
okay,
We're not restricting, there's nothing in our language here that is restricting them from doing either or.
that makes sense then.
That it for these two?
That's it.
Okay.
Really great conversation. Thank y'all. So this is what I would love to have more of, is this kind of feedback and engagement and input on.
You need to take action. Does it concerns me to take action on this, James?
I
You
think
said no at the beginning, so that's if there were any actionable items, but you,
It's up to you. I'm not really sure if it is an action, but I think if we could have that support.
It'd be better than not having it in case we find out we need it. So
Two separate items then.
two separate motions, yeah. All right, well, I'll make a motion that the Home Consortium adopt and recommend this change to the action plan amendments for Maribel LDG development as printed on the screen.
Okay.
All in favor? Any opposed? Yeah, I'll make a follow-up motion that the allocated $261,963 from those years as stated be amended to change project activity to be only for home repair. All in favor? Recommending these to council so that we have it if we need it. Okay, thank you, everybody. I've got two different agendas. That's why I keep getting confused, but I'm going to say now we are on to upcoming home funding cycle. Is that you again, James?
It's me.
Here we go.
Why I would want to meet more often because we have a lot of things to get caught up on. So home staff are proposing several options here from the city. Our goal is to fund programs at levels that have an impact and reducing the number of programs we implement. Our total HUD, our total home funding has gone down by $400,000 from 2022 numbers. In 2022, we were allocated, and it pulled up, but I think 1.4 million. We were allocated 1,050,000 this year. So we have seen our home, what we can work with, reduce significantly over the past couple of years by about 20%. And we're also wanting to take into context all of the other resources that are coming online over the next 5 years. Again, we're working in the context of our 5-year consolidated plan right now. It also happens that the CDBG DR resources are also on about a same timeline. So for y'all that have followed along with the city of Asheville, we received a $225 million grant from HUD for CDBG DR, of which City Council approved, and HUD also approved a $28 million allocation for multifamily rental construction. So that's rehab, new construction. That's a 6-year timeline that we have on that, which fairly well aligns with the 5-year timeline on our consolidated plan. The state of North Carolina also received a CDBG DR grant, of which out of their $1.4 billion allocation have put 1.1 into housing. 807 million of that is going toward single family reconstruction and rehab, and that's across the entire Western North Carolina area. So that's going to be across all of our home consortium region as well. And they've also put, I think, $100 million into a multifamily rental construction program as well. So there's a lot of funding coming over the next few years for home repair, rehabilitation, new construction is also going to be funded from the city of Asheville, but also from the state of North Carolina's programs as well. Just putting that into context, while we talk about our estimated total funding available to commit, our 2025 grant of $1,050,000 after you take away administrative costs as well as a reserve for CHOTOs, that's the Community Housing Development Organization operating cost. That hasn't really been used much in this program the last few years. I would really like to get to a model where we are supporting community housing development organizations, making sure that they're able to be a part of our affordable housing community and be stronger in bringing more affordable housing in the market and preserving it as well. So setting aside those 10% for administrative costs and it's a 5% for CHOTO operating reserve, takes you down to 707,000 we have just to make for general allocations. We have 193,490 in uncommitted program income. Again, I mentioned that we've got funds committed to the Fairhaven Meadows project. We had about 400,000 in program income we've collected over the last few years, and after that not splitting off, but using it to help fill the gap for Fairhaven Meadows, we have about 193 left to use an uncommitted program income. And then with your approval. Glad we did that. The rescinded Maribel Award, canceling that project will free up $500,000. So it takes us to 1,590,197. That's how much we're really there. There may be some other projects that are still in the pipeline that are, maybe projects that were awarded funds the past few years that did not get the tax credits that they anticipated getting. So we'll come back to this group with maybe some potential other substantial amendments in the future of, we really want to make sure those projects can happen, but if they can't, then we may need to cancel those allocations as well. But right now, this is what we are conservatively saying we know for sure that we can work with. So we're proposing 3 options. We're open to others. We really want to be open to others, but again, with our goal of funding activities at a level that has an impact, and also reducing the number of programs we implement. We as staff are pretty new at this. I have 6-7 years of HUD experience. I worked for the Department of Housing and Urban Development for 7 years, but I worked in multifamily housing development. I didn't do home. So these programs are pretty new. So and Kaylee is great. She's also been here for about a year. So we really want to hone in on doing a couple of programs and doing them well, and really just focusing on funding them at levels that can have an impact. So our first option that we'll talk about is rental construction only. That's what we did in this past year's action plan. Was we just did rental construction. Every dollar that y'all did in last year's action plan was for rental construction. The next option that we might propose is a hybrid of down payment assistance, tenant-based rental assistance, and homeowner rehab. Y'all heard from Jacob when he talked about one of the biggest needs or biggest issues that were voiced from their community engagement, stakeholder engagement surveys was affordability. So that's affordability for renters, affordability for homeowners. And we all know that affordability works 2 ways. You have to have supply, and you also have to be able to support demand too. So we would be open to hearing y'all's ideas on that. The other thing that we might propose is a demand side only home program, which is down payment assistance for home ownership and tenant-based rental assistance for renters. And I can walk you through what some of those numbers might look like. So for rental construction only, this is what, again, 100% right there in rental construction. The outcomes is generally what we would expect to see with I used Fairhaven Meadows as an example. The home assistance per unit there was about $250,000 per unit, which is pretty high. We don't really want to get much higher than that. But just assuming that we may see those higher costs over the next 5 years, which is probably pretty likely, that's the number of units that we might expect to subsidize with that allocation. Option 2 is this, again, a mix model of down payment assistance, tenant-based rental assistance, and homeowner rehab. So with a quarter each going to down payment assistance and tenant-based rental assistance, and then homeowner rehab receiving the remaining 50%. The reason we would not propose funding a program that it includes multifamily housing rental construction at a level less than the full amount is what we've heard from developers is that the gaps are so big and the work that goes into getting this home financing just isn't worth it at smaller amounts. So if we were to fund multifamily construction, staff are not suggesting to do that at any level really less than the full grant amount that we have. And that's just because of rising costs that we've seen in the market, but also our home allocation is that much smaller. Go over the next 5 years, we do not expect it to. If anything, it may continue to be reduced.
Which means
we're seeing gaps come up in construction of a couple $1 million. Even after we've given an initial allocation, they're coming back with those bigger gaps once they're finally getting their firm construction estimates. So this is the hybrid option. The third option, as I said, this is a demand side only, where we're only supporting down payment assistance for homeowners to be able to buy homes, and then tenant-based rental assistance for low-income tenants in rental. And I'd love to hear y'all's.
I know.
Please do.
Jacob and Mary, in your listening sessions in the communities, what have you seen their priority? Because I think that, to represent our communities,
Right.
what is the best fit that we're discussing so that we don't make a decision based just on one community?
Right.
I think it's covering all three of those. Sort of what we outlined is the three primary that's not even the question is down payment systems, tenant-based rental systems, and yeah, seems to be a common consistency that amongst all the groups that we've done so far, there's agreement. Everybody agrees that that's going to be the most bang for your buck, so to speak. At least the most noticeable that you can see instead of doing new development, because some of these projects like Lakeshore Villas, like when I started with Buncombe County, that was still going through the approval process for Board of Adjustment. Now they finally broke the law. Basically the whole comp plan there, so you don't really see as much of the impact of your dollars by doing a new construction, or I guess new construction period. Other aspects that came up is really just making sure that we keep that void for new construction and then gap funding for projects. And then of course, like we talked about, that's doing the rehab, but that's still fell under like the rehab septic systems. So that's pretty.
That's from,
I doubt Transylvania will have anything new to add, but yeah,
that's from the listening sessions just this week, not the old data surveys.
correct.
Okay. Do we have any information? So you kind of threw out the state stuff, around 100 million in rental construction, affordable rental, and 805 million in statewide single family. Do we have any data for our 4 counties?
For
Just our 4 counties?
The allocation of the fund.
Yeah, like how much is Buncombe and Henderson? We don't know.
We don't know.
It's not
yet,
done like that.
right.
It's not broken
But
up.
what I can say is that what they are prioritizing, at least at the state level, with their DR program, is they're required to make 80% of their investments with their overall grant. 80% have to go into what's called most impacted and distressed areas, of which Buncombe County is one. And I believe Henderson is another. So that doesn't mean that all 80% of those dollars are going there, but they are going to, if you look at their action plan, they do have a couple of phases that they've outlined on how they're going to go about implementing these programs. They're going to be targeting those most impacted and distressed areas first, as well as targeting fairly deep affordability. And I say fairly, they're targeting 60% AMI or less. With these programs in general, 80% AMI is what we're required. That's the threshold that we have to make investments at that affordability level. They're going to be targeting that 60% AMI repair and rehabilitation, as well as a multifamily construction as well. So we should see those kind of things coming in nearer time, sooner rather than later. Yes.
Just to say, but it's a state-driven project. It's not like, after you've got your staff, you're doing it. We're at the mercy of whatever the state decides. It's state-driven.
Right.
As a manager and other managers in the region, we're not sure what that's going to look like. We've all dealt with commerce, and so we don't know what that looks like. So we've got. So, if you allow me back to this, that as it relates to, and I know we got rental construction, I know that, but the down payment in the tenant base outside of Asheville and maybe Buncombe County, the question I would ask about if we move all our money to that model is there capacity in our region to administer down payment assistance in tenant base? And how does moving the money from rental construction into those other pots, how does that impact our chodos? So I know at least in Henderson County, in Hendersonville, we've used our home funds to help our chodos do the LIHTC projects and even some of our private developers to do that. It's the question in the capacity of what it takes to stand up a down payment assistance and tenant-based rental assistance program and tracking that and all the administrative and homeowner. So I'll throw that out.
I'll speak to one point on that because at the Henderson County meeting, and Liz, if you want to add this, I mean, I felt like both WNC Source was there, and they're like, we have a waiting list a mile long for rental assistance. Like, if y'all can put more rental assistance, funding out here for us, we can use it. And Habitat was there as well and talked about their down payment assistance program. And I think that they also discussed a need in that specific program for Habitat. So, not to say that, obviously supporting additional new construction isn't always, a thing, but I hear you on the question of, are there organizations, doesn't have to be the city.
No.
The city of Asheville does have a down payment assistance program. Buncombe County does have a tenant-based rental assistance program. But there are organizations in Henderson County that are providing those services and say that they can use that funding and can do more with that funding. So it would be similar to your partnerships with, HAC or New Development or Home Rehab. Those organizations that are doing that in Henderson County, across boundaries, obviously not just for the county, but also for the city. I think would be the partners in implementation.
It's challenging though. The city of Asheville struggled for 4, 5, 6 years to get down payment assistance out. And then it took literally changing an entire policy and getting council to understand kind of a amortization schedule and return. It was all this different stuff. And then we finally adopted it by way of partnership. We're not doing it at all. We funded MHO. I think I heard Jeffrey earlier. And that's how we handled it. And that was like was that last year or do we add a year for Helene? So it was 2 years ago. So I get your point. And we had tried it in several other capacities, partnered with a bank in Georgia. It fell through. Like it's not easy. Now TBRA, I feel like we always have partners at the table wanting more, more, more.
Yes, and we already meeting. It's
Okay.
not only finding units.
Minimal. And then where's this segueing over in other housing discussions of the city where we're talking about maybe expanding those rental dollars into other counties for Asheville residents because we can't find the housing here to do it.
But that's where this program can.
Right. That's
This
what,
program can expand outside city limits of Asheville. And I will share that, like, we have heard from community partners who have worked with us on tenant-based rental assistance programs that they do sometimes struggle to find the units. That they, not just do they have a wait list because of funding, but they have a wait list because of supply. And as Jonathan was talking about, that you have to find a specific type of unit at a certain rent level that meets the HUD home requirements. They can be difficult to find, but we do hear from our community that rental assistance is needed, but it's really, it's difficult to implement in a way.
Can this follow up? Can this funding be used for administrative costs? I mean, example, to hire an additional staff person to administer the down payment assistance.
Yeah.
You see where
it's in there. I think that's, so you took 10%.
That's our city administrator.
That's city.
So that's for
So for partnership agent, well.
So usually within a program like that, at least what the model that we've had with this within city limits has been that we'll often pay for the administrative costs with our CDBG funds. It'll be like a housing services type of allocation. There is the opportunity to use home funds to, in their budget, include program project delivery costs. So that can be rolled into. It does reduce the amount of funding that actually does go to beneficiaries, but it can be used for that. And it's really, I think, usually capped at like 10% of an allocation.
And the reason I say that and I'm doing all the talking, y'all tell me to be quiet.
No, it's helpful. It's good.
I mean, I think I'll speak for the smaller municipalities that are not entitlement. One of the critical, I know we're trying to build capacity in our organization. We don't have a community development department. We need one, and that's where I'm going. But not everybody can do, I mean, Hendersonville will move it up, right? But building capacity in our smaller jurisdictions to be able to be the advocates, be able to, hey, we've got these programs available. It's kind of where I know we may not be able to use this money to do that, but I will advocate that we've got to build capacity in the region because it's spreading out and the region needs more folks who have the understanding of how to reach these programs and get the money out to the folks that need it. So I'll get off my soapbox.
So I've got a question and then a comment. What is our absolute deadline for committing this funding?
June.
So the absolute deadline is we have a pretty long runway. The HUD requirement is that you should have a written agreement with your funding within 2 years of your grant agreement.
Okay.
So we usually expect, we've just got our allocation announcement last week that we're receiving this, coming year's grant. And with that funding, they generally expect that when we get a grant agreement executed later, probably in September is like kind of when it should happen. From that point, we have like 2 years to get all that funding under a written agreement with some kind of subrecipient or developer. And then it's about a 5-year timeline. Some of those have been kind of waived because of COVID the last few years. And we received a few waivers this year for a couple of things, but I don't think that for our because of the disaster. But yeah, that's kind of the timeline. Is we have about 2 years to submit it, but laying the groundwork now and being able to do another application cycle, we could potentially stand up an early application cycle this fall and do another regular one come September. That's within our ability to do that.
Okay, so well, I put this out here to the rest of the board, and again, what you talked about who you're representing here. I want to be honest and transparent. I am representing the city of Asheville, which is a larger organization that has the capacity to do this. So 2 things. One, in the construction business, time is always either a partner or something in opposition. If we have a larger runway, there is absolutely a fourth option here, which is to take time to consider this, because as we find more information from Bowen, as we find more information from these listening sessions, we may come away with different data and go, well, correct, maybe 75% should go to this, right? Now, with that said, we'll also be honest and say that I am embarrassed by how much of a census data nerd I am. And looking at, I'm going to read the whole report with Sage and Jacob. We're going to do a book club. It's going to be awesome. The one thing that united all the county, the members here, was households under 25. And again, that's not saying that we're losing individuals under 25 in these counties. It's saying that they cannot be the head of household. It has never been harder to be a young person in America. That is quadruply true for those of us here in Western North Carolina. I have had a lot of success here. That would not have happened unless there was a pandemic for my wife and I to move in here. And that is, you can't roll the dice on that. That's a terrible thing to say to begin with. So down payment assistance and tenant-based rental assistance, we got to look at who that helps. And of course, that's going to help those get a, unintended, it's sort of a foot in the door here. So while I recognize there is a challenge in administering that, I recognize that there is privilege in promoting that. But those 2 things, which are hard, get at what unites us all as members. So I would say either we buy time to see what our options are, or we really got to consider, that is an alarming statistic to say that we're using young people, which are going to be service industry, which keep us all going this, because that's very much an area of line.
But to Sam's point, the data also showed that supply was very, very low, like 1% in every single one of those counties. So if we set aside that money specifically for down payment assistance or tenant-based rental assistance, and the supply is not there, then that money's earmarked for things that we can't actually spend it on.
I think the point is that some of that supply should be coming, the thing is, we just don't know, through CDBGDR.
Yeah.
And that is a much larger pot of money.
So
This is a decision we can't make today.
We can't.
okay.
We can't.
But for the consolidated plan, which is a much shorter timeline than what you
we
were
have.
talking about, we have to put these goals in the consolidated
But can't we put them all?
plan. And that is,
You can't put them all.
But
I
they
would just
need
encourage us
focus.
to make them very conservative, because we may decide that some goals are not going to actually be a priority. So I would encourage us to we're going to get this really great housing assessment that's going to say there's need across supply, there's need across
Right.
demand, there's need across home buyers, there's need across renters. It's kind of our job to kind of pick what is our lane that we're going to say we can't do everything. So what's the thing we're going to do? And I'll tell you, if we do a 100% multifamily construction or a rehab program, we'll spend it.
Yeah.
Like it will get it out the door, no problem. But is it the gap that we want to fill as a consortium? I present that to you.
It doesn't seem like we'll have a problem spending any of the dollars under any of those categories. It's just whether or not administrating some of them in the appropriate areas can be done at the same time. I'm hesitant on rental construction because I know here in our city, $80 million in bonds. We have $40 million in housing for the county. Now we have, DR money coming. I'm just curious, but I feel like I need more data. So, and I'm kind of sensing that's where the room is at too. And then the housing stuff from Bowen is coming. We may have more information to make decisions from. So knowing that, what do you need from us today to get language through to June? Does it need to be that specific? Can it just be?
I think we can keep our
Do you need
goals
dollar
wide.
buckets?
We can make wide goals in the consolidated plan. This year's action plan is part of the consolidated plan. So every 5 years when that comes around, we do need to put in the action plan, which programs and at what levels we're going to be kind of funding. So that's coming up like next month. So that's why we wanted to make sure we could get this group together. So potentially we could try to convene like a virtual, just to focus on consolidated plan once we have that ready to go later next month. And we could do a focus, like let's only talk about consolidated plan. Let's talk about this year's action plan and get a final say from this consortium just on that one. We could call a special meeting and make it virtual and say, we're only going to talk about this one item.
That's what I'm kind of sensing from the group. Does that jive with all of y'all? We'd have to do it early June, sorry.
Yeah, so it'll be probably no less than a month from now.
Yeah.
Because we have to have the plan submitted to HUD by July 11th is our final work day. I don't work on Saturdays, except sometimes.
Let's do it sooner than later,
We'll
just
do
for
it.
your sake.
Okay.
And the ask is to come up with the percentages.
That-
That's the purpose of the meeting.
Yeah, because with the action plan, we do have to outline not necessarily which specific project. So if we do for example, if we do just a rental construction program, we don't have specific projects that we're going to say we're going to do 500,000 here, 500,000 there. What we're going to ask is, are we going to do a rental construction program? And that's where we will receive applications for that rental construction program, and y'all will help us make specific funding decisions about which actual development gets an allocation.
So quick question, how important is the homeowner rehab and the money? How much of that is we allocated, other than, we just talked about the trust, the Asheville Buncombe, what other housing homeowner rehab have we allocated out? I mean,
We do.
We have a significant
Okay.
amount.
Yeah, a lot.
We've partnered in the past with Habitat for Humanity, but also with CHC Madison County as a second partner.
That's
what they do.
It's all
I don't
they
think
do.
they have the capacity for the rental assistance. I think they are.
They're waiting.
I think
Not happening.
we
We're
have
not.
to look at each
We're
county
not able to get to
individually
this.
as to how to meet their needs.
I have 2 projects in limbo right now that.
Oh, it's here. Yeah, I've got it on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a queue of over 10 projects that if I participate in home funding, I can do major rehab on homes. But if the state does not give me enough money, I rely on City of Asheville. I'm not saying.
We're gonna,
Well, I don't worry.
we're gonna have a public, guys, we're gonna have a public comment section too. It's actually next after we talk about meeting schedule and that kind of stuff. We could also talk offline too, because I'd love to hear more about that. So just to be clear, we're gonna try and set up a virtual meeting in the next couple weeks to go over this and try and put these things into buckets and percentages. I'm not sure, we all just kind of said we want to have housing data, Bowen data, all the things
Yeah.
in front of us to decide, but I don't know that we're gonna have that in 2 weeks. So
May is his delivery date to us.
end of May.
Supposedly, so should be.
And that's delivery
day
day for you, but not public day for you. That's delivery for you to review and,
Well, I mean.
Share
you know,
later?
We're not gonna, I'm not gonna second guess.
so we'll get
I mean,
his
we're gonna-
data.
Yeah.
next
we can
week.
share it basically as soon as he gives us to it, and I can tell him to share, if you've got X amount done, we want that. If you still need to work on these 2 pieces, because he just reached out, he's having trouble getting housing choice voucher, for example. So I know there's some stuff that
Okay.
may lag, but, there is a massive crunch on this. I was just looking at my email. I did reach out to Dennis Newbern in August of 2023.
He's no longer
To
with us.
start, right, I know, to start this process. And I believe we had a contract in last September was when our contract was finalized. It could have been in August, right ahead of Helene. So our process has been delayed,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
creating, I recognize
Yeah,
a crunch here in terms of like, and HUD has the 60-day deadline from the date of allocation. So the date of allocation was May 13th. Therefore, comp plan must be delivered by July 13th.
we'll get there.
So it is like, no one is, we are definitely not happy with the super compressed timeline and having to come to y'all with like, yeah, can you make that decision now?
We get that a lot
today?
actually in this group. We get that a lot. We get lots of last minute
Yeah,
emergencies.
but
and
it's not,
It's
it is
okay.
not how the ideal process would be in terms of feedback loops and discussion and deliberation.
Yeah,
I
and
do want to acknowledge.
In an ideal world, we would have been engaging with the consortium since like Christmas time on the development of the consolidated plan.
Yes.
We know, we're gonna recollect ourselves. We have about 10 minutes. I'm trying to be conscientious of everybody's
I
time.
have to run, I'm sorry.
Yeah, as do I in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, a couple things. So I'm gonna segue us right into future scheduling. Did you have anything else here?
No.
Okay, so we have two things we wanted to talk to you about, but now we're kind of running short on time. One was, what is our meeting cadence? Karen, thank you. 15
Sorry,
minutes.
I've
No,
got to
that's
get
okay.
to the North Carolina conference.
Okay, thank you.
I'll see you tomorrow.
So, we have had some in person, we've done a lot of virtual. It seems like sometimes it's easier for us to get together virtually for these kind of last minute things. But we do kind of want to have 1 or 2 meetings a year where we're in person, because this has been helpful too, right? So we're going to suggest some future dates once we know the full calendar. I don't think we have time to do all that right now. Right now, what we really need to assess is when in the next couple of weeks can we all meet virtually? And then also in the next 10 days or so, as you are evaluating how you're personally going to make this decision, if you have requests for data that we might be able to get for you, send it to me, send it to James, copies both, and we'll try and flesh out as much as we can that's feasible to help inform the decision. So
May I propose this same time, Wednesday morning, 10 a.m., June 11th?
let's look.
And Councilwoman Turner,
Yes.
I hear the urgency in trying to get through this to public comment, but since I don't want to be the parliamentarian, but since we made previous motions, should we motion to continue to that date for allocation?
I don't know that we'll need to.
Okay.
That was really specifically for an item that goes to council. But Wednesday, the 11th, at what time? At this time, 10 to 12?
10 a.m.
I can do that. Can anyone not do that? Wow, James, home run.
Are we planning on virtual?
It will be virtual.
Virtual.
Okay, so great. June 11th, 10 a.m. virtual. Okay, and we'll have to make some decisions then, but the decisions will be limited to the bucket sizes for these potential uses.
That'll be a special meeting. That's just only agenda item will be to talk about the allocation of this funding for this year's action.
And are we gonna approve the consolidated plan too?
I would request,
Yeah.
yeah. So that'll be two different things.
Yeah, we'll get to review and do that. Yep.
Review and approve for submission to city council.
City council, yeah.
approval.
That should check all the boxes off our process needs and timeline. Does that sound good? And then maybe when we're meeting virtually, we'll have a couple other dates for the later in the year to suggest, because we do need to get back on track. Helene hit us pretty hard, but we need to regroup and get in a steady schedule. All right. Any other questions or comments before we move to public comment?
The only other thing I would ask is future actual meeting schedule, just kind of a cadence of, I'd like to reestablish like a general cadence of at least a quarterly meeting of the consortium, alternating from a hybrid to an in-person. We had this one here at City of Asheville, but I would also ask that if any of y'all are willing to receive us at your jurisdictions, we'd be happy to go there and bring this as a roadshow. So that's 4 regular meetings throughout the year, 2 of them virtual, 2 of them in person. So we can hammer out those details later. I can ask our staff, Kaylee and Sophia, to help do a poll with the group where that actually will work. But
And then you'll have some deadlines you have to tag in the fall. We end up always adding a 5th or 6th meeting for some reason, just a heads up. And then, and it's usually virtual. And then there's something that always shifts in the fall when the awards are announced or something. So yeah, if we could just maybe get some suggested dates from staff at the virtual meeting, and we can kind of hammer them out. Sounds like this Wednesday at 10 a.m. thing might work for everyone's schedule. It's great.
June 11th.
Yep. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments before we go to public comment? Do we have members of the public that wanted to make a statement? You have up to 3 minutes. If you do, if you want, maybe you could stand up and say it from there. I'm not sure if the mic.
You
will
could come close to the
Maybe come
microphone up
close.
here.
And then just say your name and you'll have 3 minutes, and I guess I'll run a timer.
And if anyone online would like to provide public comment, feel free to either raise your hand or
We should have the queue going.
there's a.
Okay.
queue.
No
in the
one in
queue.
there right
Okay.
now. Okay. Just make sure to refresh.
Please state your name and who you're with.
Yeah, so I'm Kelly Nosseter and I'm the loan fund manager for Mountain Housing Opportunities. And there's been some talk about down payment assistance today. So I thought I would just come up and give a little bit of information about our down payment assistance offering. We are not limited to Buncombe County, so we actually do lend in Henderson. We've been doing down payment assistance loans for the last couple of years for Habitat's houses that are built in Henderson County, but they're for the public at large, as long as they're 80% or below AMI. We use multiple funding sources. Some of that is home, some of it is CDBG, but we also have unrestricted funds, county funds. So, if you have people in your area that are 80% or below and you feel like you need a down payment assistance resource, I just wanted people to know it is in the community. We are working on a contract to get home program income to sort of roll through the down payment assistance program again, but feel free to, let your residents know we are here to help fill that gap if they need it. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. And I was fumbling on the words earlier, but they do a shared appreciation process. Any other public comments? Go ahead, come on up and say your name. You got 3 minutes.
I'm Matt Bennett with Community Housing Coalition. I'm also construction manager for Mark Alliance for Rebuilding Communities, which is the long-term recovery group that CHC has stood up sponsoring. I'll address kind of the big picture issues, and to be honest, involved with the repair programs. So, excuse me, managing the replacement home program, which started 3 years ago, and thankfully Dogwood also contributed to that program because the delays were so long getting the first contract in place with home that it actually took a year. And the contract was already signed when I arrived, and it still took a year to just get that finalized. So our experience, with the home program has been very frustrating. Our priorities are repair of existing homes, replacing homes that are beyond repair, and we have a new program which is involved with acquiring homes, rehabbing them, and reselling them as affordable homes.
Wow.
So the board just allocated $400,000 for that, but clearly we're going to need a lot more funding if that program is going to make an impact. And by the way, we have 0 housing stock in the county. So rental assistance programs are great, but our needs are beyond that. We also are interested in the future, exploring rental construction. And our big roadblock there is infrastructure. We actually own some land, CHC owned land, but the cost of getting the utilities to that land, which is just in the city limits, right next to our housing office, has prevented us from doing an affordable program there. So we'd love to do that. But yeah, the problems that we've had with just contracts and environmental reviews, draw requests and so on, it's been horrible. Now, granted, it's gotten better, and we really appreciate the new staff and what you all are doing, and you all have been great personal level, but we're still seeing, some pretty significant delays. We would like to have a land trust for Madison County. I don't know if this one can be expanded or what, but it's something that, is on our wish list. It's not in a position to create that being a small organization. So, Leon, do you want to speak specifically to the repairs?
Yeah, that was.
Thank you.
Just give us a quick, share your name and who you're with. Have 3 minutes.
My name's Liana McCune. I work with the Community Housing Coalition. I am a case manager, but I also do project management. I run the repair side of our home funding. And I've been doing this now, it's been almost 3 years, and I see challenges getting awarded money. What happens is that the state only allots us a certain amount of money. Construction costs are high. I need the home funding gap to make homes ready for people to age in place, and I need this money faster. Another thing that I did want to suggest is that we receive a wide range of housing phone calls. And recently we've had a large uptick in rental assistance, specifically in Madison County, because what's happened is hospitality workers, manufacturer workers, they've lost their jobs and they're not able to make their rent. So I would suggest like just thinking about that, the trickle down of what has happened to our economy in this area is going to affect people needing rental assistance. While we don't have the units, we're gonna see it. But Madison County, there's so many people that need to age in place that without this money, they're not going to be able to because the state does not allocate enough money. So we could get these environmental reviews. If there's anything I can do on my side to help these things move faster, happy to do it. Thank you guys.
Thanks for all you're doing too. Any other members of the public wish to speak? Come on up, Rich. Just give us a quick.
I'll try to be very quick. Rich Olenichek, I'm the Director of Community Rental Investments at Mountain Housing Opportunities. All I ask is because of the reallocation process, if you can be as flexible as possible. Even if you don't allocate some dollars for it up front, you can be as flexible as possible. You saw that $500,000 came back, right? And maybe, you know, CHC needs it, or maybe we need it for a rental development, or maybe somebody has used all their TBRA. So, sorry, James, but you know, I've seen this process go on for 20 some years now, and there's always money coming back, and there's always projects that don't go forward. And there's always projects that need more money. So if you can keep it as flexible as possible, so that you could fill the gaps where needed, or when they're needed. That's all. Thanks. Thank you.
I had a similar thought when we were talking about the 3 pools and the last minute need for Fairhaven to have $500,000. Or 600, whatever it was. So I think we're adjourned for the day, but we have a big task ahead of us. So again, if you have any questions that might help you inform your decision on the 11th, reach out. We'll try and get you any data we can as soon as you guys
I'm telling
get.
Patrick right now, like I need these.
Tell him Sage said today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's excited.
The email is on its way out.
Patrick Bowen is our great advisor in all things, but he shared something with me recently that I really appreciate. He said when he is out traveling and lecturing on housing and affordable housing and so on, he often refers to Asheville and the surrounding area as a success. So our policies and things that we have been crafting in recent years are making waves and helping other communities too. Always more to do, but good progress.
We adjourned.
We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Did you say when the student council meeting is?